Greetings! Welcome to the Devlog for hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. We're going to start off as always with a quick sound check. Make sure your speakers aren't up too high. Wonderful. So what have we got for you this week? Well, as I have been in a purgatory consisting entirely of metadata, I managed to take a little bit of a sidetrack, of course, from working on the item spawner stuff, specifically the item spawner sort of filtering. To a lot of folks asked, like, can that be brought over to the rest of the game proper, especially because there's a number of systems that don't have the smoothest hand tracking, imaginable. And it just so happens that I was able to. It's been a while since I played around with filtering, and truth be told, I'm a lot better at math in an applied sense since the last time I tried that. So I would like to talk about filtering and show you folks the sort of new proposed options, and really sort of explain under the hood some of what is going on and what has changed. So, to begin with, there was already contextual filtering in H3, namely when you use a bipoded weapon, there is some filtering present there, and there was already a little bit of filtering when you use the virtual stock, but it actually wasn't as effective as it could be because I did some of the math wrong, or rather just didn't actually cancel out all of the sources of noise. So what we're going to be talking about first here, there are two new options here, hand filtering and sniping assist. And these can function independently of each other, because I know some of you are going to want one and not the other based on what platform you are and the way you play the game. So, to be able to better visualize this, let's leave our controller active when we pick up an object. You'll notice with no filtering, obviously there's a little bit of movement between the controller and the object, and that's simply because this is a live physics object at all times, which means it is perpetually trying to catch up with the controller, but because it can do that very fast, it is usually just one frame behind the controller, which is why you see that little bit of disconnect. If we enable hand filtering, and this is using primarily a technique called a €1 filter, which is super effective but a bit of a pain in the butt to tune, you can see now that there's a little bit of damping, especially for slow motions. It's still, if I make a large motion, instantaneously moves with the hand, and that's why this filter is great compared to a lot of other methods that tend to temporally lag behind for sharp movements. So I can still, if I can actually hit something, fire as normal. Man, I want to get that watermelon. There we go. That was just annoying me. But yeah, and so obviously this feels super obvious that they're disconnected because this is visible. But once again, here's me moving this around. Notice that it's really, I can sort of make a sharp motion like this, no hand filtering, like so. You can see, notice how as I move this here, there's that little bit of shake, and that's my hand shake coming through. If I turn on hand filtering, you'll notice that I can still move this back and forth. I can still even do a super sharp motion like this, but it has factored out a whole bunch of my handshake. So that this in a big way is more about just a general smoothing that's going to be great for those of you who are on Quest 2, for those of you who are on WMR, etc. Basically anything that's not lighthouse tracked, or rather lighthouse tracked and the tracking was set up correctly. So this should help in those regards. But as you will know, and the thing is, this isn't just for this is. It says hand filtering because that's what people will understand. It's not just hand filtering. I've actually created an invisible copy of my head and am filtering that as well. And the reason for that is that the way the virtual stock in this game works is that the moment I sort of grab something two-handed like this and move it in place, look at how stable that looks now. it is using a combination of where both of my hands are and where my head is. And that was what I didn't take into account with the filtering beforehand, was the fact that, like, head jitter also contributes to it. But that's looking great, but we're gonna notice something immediately, which is that, like, say, I don't know, let's grab a low power optic here. You know, this is gonna be great on its own down at a fairly low magnification like this. This is 6x maybe? Helps to actually load your weapon, Anton. So we can get a 10 ring, but obviously this is at 10 meters. If we move out to a greater distance, let's say, oh, I don't know, 400 meters. And let's see, to hit something at 400 meters, we would need what? 32x magnification? I'm sure some of you have attempted this freestanding before. Whew, and it looks kind of like this. So this is well, first, here it is as it currently is in H3 with no extra filtering and no head filtering. This is what it's like to attempt to shoot something at 32x freestanding. It is not oh, helps to load your weapon again, Anton. I'll take it. Not fun, basically. Almost impossible. And I mean, in real life, let's be frank, there are very few people who could hit a 32x there, but once again, like, we're not getting any stability from the stock on this because, well, it doesn't exist and our hands can move freely. Let's turn on hand filtering. This will get us part of the way. You'll notice that it's still real hard. I'm still jittering around from my own motion, but it's less high frequency. It's more like a wobble and sway. This is probably close to reality for someone who is intermediate firing magnified in real life. Oh, hit the paper at least. Now, let's turn on sniping assist. Whew, here we go. Let's take a deep breath. Let's see if we can get, I probably won't get a 10 ring, but we're gonna try. Remember, don't hold your breath while shooting ranged. You want to take a nice breath in and slowly exhale while you are shooting. Ah, only got ourselves, what is that, an 8? Let's try one more time. Whew, shake it out, shake it out. You can do this. Ah, I'm not gonna get it while you're watching me. So, you might be like, wait, how is it that stable? How are you able to keep it like that? You know, if I was sitting, I bet I could hit the 10 too. So this type, what sniping assist is, and this works even without the other hand filtering enabled, if you find the other hand filtering a little too laggy. This is what I would call velocity sensitive filtering. In that basically what this does, the easiest way to describe it, even though this sounds paradoxical, is that this amplifies stillness. Basically, below a certain velocity threshold, it isn't just that it is filtering the position of your hands, but it's actually multiplying down and arresting the actual angular velocity of the object that you're holding if you hold your hand still below a certain threshold. So it's almost like the object wants to come to rest anytime you're trying to be super still, and it takes a little bit of extra movement by your hand to get the object to start moving again. So it makes it actually possible. Oh, that was the worst shot. Come on. There we go. Touched it. It counts. It's close enough. So yeah, so that should give you an idea of what this feature can do. I've spent a lot of time this week, over there you go, tuning this to just get this, because a lot of folks are like, can I have a slider? Can I change magnitudes? I'm not going to do that just because there's a bunch of places that each of these settings can change things. And I need to make it so that a good one-size-fits-all works for doing that with, say, holding something, you know, steady, even with one hand, and being able to still CQB well, but still being able to snipe well. So this is going to be, there's no alpha this week, but next week when this is in and the first item spawner tests are in, hopefully, this will be enabled by default during the testing phase, just so I can force everyone to test it and see if it makes anyone angry. And with the idea of provisionally having this on by default in the game, because I just think it makes the experience better for a majority of users. So I gotta tell you, it feels pretty cool to be able to pop a watermelon. At this range. I don't think I got the furthest one though. Ah, janked it at the last moment. Fun stuff. Fun stuff. Anywho, let's jump out of VR. Yo! So, we're out of VR. So what else do we want to talk about? Well, I wanted to talk about a few of the other sort of challenges that related to the filtering this week, because it was not straightforward. One of the things that, and this is oftentimes you'll see someone request something act different about hands or certain sorts of object interactions, and you'll see me be like, nope, not gonna do it. And part of the reason for that is that because of the fact that this project was architected by someone who had never architected a piece of software before, it's very sensitive in certain ways. And one of the ways in which H3's codebase is super sensitive is order of operations, is basically what happens when. And there's a few oddities to the game that are partially a result of something having to occur in a specific order for something else to work. So like you'll notice sometimes if you are moving super fast, it will almost feel as though the interaction zone for a given weapon is behind where it is visually. And that has to do with the chain of how positions and certain sorts of data are being updated in the game over the course of a single frame, where a certain piece of data will be calculated and then something will be moved, and so there might be certain pieces of data that are now stale. And I ran into that like a brick wall working on this filtering. I got it working. I actually got this working like ace midweek, and then I moved while holding a gun, and I got this completely new type of strange, like it would like begin to fall back from the hand, and then the moment I would stop, it would just like jump to position and update. And I was like, what on earth is going on? And so I like panicked, went to bed feeling terrible, took a day away from it, came back, and of course then fixed it in like 30 seconds. Because sometimes you just have to step away from a problem. But basically I will have to experiment, but because of some architectural changes that I made to make this filtering work, a few of those oddities that were caused by stale data might no longer be present in the game, because I've changed something very core to when something asks for the position of the hands, what data is it fed, and is that data sort of updating immediately, or is it sort of using a value that it is relying on? So that should hopefully add to a couple little improvements across the game. But as I said, I need to extensively test it. I haven't had the time to do that yet. As for the sort of another knock-on effect is that because of the way in which bipod behavior shares some things with the sort of filtration systems, and I've torn out some of that code. I've replaced some of it. I'm pretty sure that, but if it's not my imagination, I also in the process made bipods a little more responsive without making them any sort of noisy or wobblier. So those of you who are using a bipod like an LMG at the short and mid-range especially should probably have a little bit better of an experience with that. They're still obviously sort of floaty because of the way bipods work, but they should feel less laggy in your hand, I'm pretty sure. So... but yeah, as I said, this has continued to just be a week of sort of API work and carefully. Every time I have to touch anything relating to the player's hands, it's like playing a game of Operation, except if your little tongs hit the sides, you break 5 years of work and you have no idea how to fix it. So that is what working on H3 is sometimes like. And so anytime I have to go near the player body, hands, locomotion stuff, or anything that is like right at the core of how a physical object works in this game, it's like, don't mess it up! Especially because I don't use version control still. Anyway, so that's about it for this week. I hope you're excited. I'm aiming to have a first alpha of some things for you folks to try next week. I'm just like grinding my way through all of the metadata entries. I've got like all of the guns and mags done now. I've got to just do everything else, all the other miscellaneous stuff, and then probably like write some confirmation tests to just actually check my work, because when you do something by hand over 1,000 times, that can be a fairly error-prone process, as your brain just sort of is like, no, and just flies away. So I hope you all have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you all next week. Peace.